Okay, good afternoon everybody. I hope you're having a good time here at EclipseCon. My name is Jan Köhnlein. I work for Artemis, and I'm going to tell you the next 35 minutes about XText, diagrams, and user experience. I have a couple of slides and a large demo, so a little bit of everything. Can you hear me well? Okay, I hear a bit of an echo. It's kind of confusing, but maybe normal. So, what was that? Correct. So, user experience is in the title. What is user experience? And that is actually something very fuzzy. Okay, I looked that up at Wikipedia. It's just a subsection of the entire definition they have there. But it appears to have to do something with how people react on or how people feel about your product. Okay, so if you build a product, you want people to be happy. So this is very emotional. Okay, it's about people. It's about people using your applications, your program, your software. I guess you're all into software a bit at EclipseCon. And of course, that's very subjective. So that is not something you may optimize in a way that everyone's happy. But there's a point here. As it's so emotional and it's about people, this is a good user experience will be the reason why people like your product. If they like it, they're going to buy it, they're going to recommend it to others. So it's important you build software that is kind of nice to the user, and you target the user a bit more than we do currently at Eclipse. So what are the ingredients? How do I build good user experience? Well, there's a lot of talk about usability, and it breaks down to like response times and minimize number of clicks and have clear wizards or whatever, leading things. It should be consistent, so if you can do things this way, you may do a similar thing the same way. But most of all, for me, usability is about no quirks. Okay, what is a quirk? A quirk is that kind of little bug that kind of interrupts the user. Okay, it can be from a small surprise. Okay, the application does not exactly what I want here. I don't understand, but it's not so bad. I understand what's going on. It can really be an obstacle. So, I wanted to do that with the application, but I can't. And it can be pretty grave. So, I pushed that button and I just lost all my data. Okay. And all these kinds of things, you don't want to have them in your product. Okay. I guess we all agree that these things shouldn't be there. So, why do I start with that silly kind of thing? Because I think if you're trying to integrate diagrams with XText, you are going to introduce a lot of these quirks on all kinds of levels if you don't know what you're doing. So let's start with XText. Does XText have quirks? Of course, everything has quirks. Okay, but I guess, well, it's of course up to you to decide whether XText is cool or not, or is fun to use. I'm a committer to XText, I'm biased. I say we try to choose a consistent set of features. We try to play well as an Eclipse citizen, pick up Eclipse metaphors. Don't surprise at least the Eclipse user. And most of it, I want to emphasize on that one. So if you don't like the behavior of a particular feature, be it the hover, the content assist, whatever, the linking, all kinds of components in our architecture, you can customize it because we're using that dependency injection thing. So you can adapt to your specific usability demands. Okay? You are in control, even though you get good defaults. And that's important. So little quirks maybe, but not too bad. Yeah, I've been into that topic for a long time. You may have already seen a couple of talks by me on that topic, how to add diagrams to XText. I mean, you're going to really introduce a lot of quirks if you do that the wrong way. Let me explain you a bit why. Okay, a quirk. First of all, there's linking. So if you have the diagram technologies we have, they are based on EMF, and XText is based on EMF, but you want them to interact with each other. But they use EMF quite differently. So in XText, everything has a name, and you refer to it by its name. And in the other, diagram technologies, you usually use some kind of technical ID. That means if you refer to something by its ID, then you can change its name and all that stuff and nothing happens. It's not bad. If you change a name in an XText language, you have to trigger a rename refactoring, okay? Because everyone who refers to that element has to change the way they refer to it. And that's a completely different set of operation. And that's going to introduce a quirk. Because if you do it in this editor, it behaves completely different as in the other. And there's a big potential you're doing things wrong here. What people always like is, oh, I have these concurrent editors. One is graphical, one is XText based. That's not going to work. This is not going to work because in XText, the parser, which kicks in when you change something, even without saving, will replace entire subtrees of the model. That is a very, very bad operation if you kind of have listeners on the model elements and if you rely on them to persist by their ID. Okay? That is not going to work. And it's even worse because we have our locking mechanism and diagram editing frameworks use CMF transaction. And if you have two transaction frameworks, maybe you know what can happen. So there's a big potential for even for deadlocks. So don't do that. Don't do direct editing on the same model with XText and a graphical editor with immediate synchronization. And this is something most people are not aware of. Everything's fine as long as models are valid. But when you're in a tool, your models are invalid almost all of the time. Why is that? I start typing, I start opening a curly brace, and I'm in totally broken model because now it expects a closing curly brace, it's not there. Okay? So major parts of the model may not be possible. And the same holds for diagram editors. So if I do some strange operation, I may have some inconsistent state or a couple of root elements, even though I'm only allowed to have one. That means that you can save specific things in one editor, and you may lose the other representation, or you can save in that editor, and you may lose this representation. This is all kind of solvable problems with workarounds, but this is going to introduce quirks. So this is going to irritate your user. Okay, so if you want to do it this way, be prepared to get the feedback from your users. The worst thing I find in diagram editing frameworks is that they focus so much on model change. So you use the diagram to change the underlying model. And in order to make that work, you need a mapping from diagram to the model and the way back, because you can kind of modify both, and the changes must travel both directions. But that doesn't work even for the simplest cases. A tree with children, so this is EMF containment. Okay, it may look like this in a textual representation, but you expect it to look like this in a graphical representation. Okay? And this is a completely different containment structure. Okay, we have a diagram containing 3 nodes and an edge, and here we have a node containing 2 nodes. So containment means life cycle. I delete A from here, what happens? Well, maybe the tool prunes, oh, there's a parenthesis missing, prunes the edges, but B and C become new like root nodes. In this case, if I delete A, I delete B and C, because they're contained. They're, you know? And these kind of things, they're not resolvable easily. So you have to really make sure what happens when I delete something here and what happens then there. And in this case, for example, multiple root elements, you won't be able to save that in XText format. Nice, isn't it? So the simplest example doesn't work. And it's going to be a lot of work to make it kind of appear good to the user. This is a really, really big quirk. Because of the bidirectionality. Okay, you assume same structures on both sides, even though there aren't. So what can we do? I mean, I've been telling that for like 3 years now, I guess. Niklas gone. Just give up editing the model, the underlying model, graphically, if you work with XText, okay? If that's XText based, just build views on the model. And that means that you change from the bidirectional mapping to a unidirectional mapping, just from your authoritative model to diagram. And that makes this direction unidirectional, and you have a diagram view. That does not mean that you cannot edit the thing here. It just means that you cannot make changes that actually travel back here to your authoritative textual model. Okay, so far so good. This is what you should expect when you try to combine these two things. Sorry. Okay, then there are a couple of quirks that are kind of built in the diagram frameworks we have. One is, well, the assumption that all the usability is built in. It's not exactly true, especially for the JAF3 based things. This is kind of really old-fashioned, really bad behavior. What I like most is to be asked, which kind of work do you want to lose? The one that you did that was not synchronized, or the one that you have in the editor currently? So this can happen, it happens. Okay, major quirks. And of course, design. I mean, we are all, I assume we're all more software developers than graphics designers. So we need good defaults for the design, and we don't have them. And the worst of all is that most of these frameworks are written by people like me, Java developers. And if we solve a problem, we build a framework. We know how to solve it for the entire world. And that's gonna, simplify the use case. That's gonna, add too many abstractions. That's gonna make people not adapt to their specific use case. So this is pretty bad. If you build a framework, please don't use that much private final thing. Okay? That will really annoy your users. So that's actually the point here. Diagram frameworks, they take so much responsibility of certain things and hide something by abstraction that you actually lose control over the user experience. And remember, user experience is why people like or buy your product. So you're giving up your major asset. This is what I expect from diagram editors. They should render in a modern, temporary fashion without flaws. Data should have smooth transitions to guide the user's eye. They should be self-explaining. No one reads manuals. And of course have all the modern stuff like multi-touch support and that. And what my experience is, the more I use some kind of a framework, the more I'm kind of not really able to get to the basics, and they're hidden from me. And actually, I found JavaFX is pretty much the opposite. So JavaFX allows me to write a diagram editor relatively fast because the abstractions, the root abstractions are pretty clear, and I don't need too many abstractions on top of that. Unfortunately, it's Java, so JavaFX is pretty verbose to program against. If you have tried that, you may know that. So I'm a committer also to this project, Extend, and that is actually a very, very good language to program with JavaFX. Not because I'm a committer, but because it really reduces all the noise that Java adds to these kinds of APIs. I've written a couple of blog posts if you're interested in that. So with these two components, I was able to build my own, small framework. And I don't want it to be a framework that's like guiding you to do everything exactly this and that way. I just want to put a thin layer of nodes and edges on top of JavaFX, and maybe have libraries with predefined things you could use, but you don't have to. Okay, that's the intention. I don't need a framework that adds all kinds of abstractions. And that's called FX Diagram. And this is open source. You can use it. And I'm going to demonstrate you how that works in combination with Xtext. So live demo now. On the left-hand side, you see an example Xtext model. It's the state machine example. Is it readable? Oh, you all look like it's not readable. Maybe I should change the font. Okay, is it better? Doesn't matter that it's not complete. So, it's one of the example languages we ship with Xtext about state machines. It's from Martin Fowler's book on domain-specific languages. It's a state machine. State machines have historically ever been graphical. Okay, why is that? Because state machines focus on the connections between things, the transitions, and not so much what are the details of that specific state or node. It's more like a fixed thing. So if you're highlighting connections, you're very well with diagrams. So I want to have a diagram with that. And I wrote a little configuration that maps to the FX diagram that you're going to see on the right-hand side. So I add one of the states here, active. I add that to my diagram. Okay, here we go. I hope you can read it more or less. Okay. So what happened is the system just picked up the entire state machines and visualized it in a graph. And that was all like in an animation thing. And it's not to make it look slick or cool. This is just to give you a hint what's going on. Okay, it's like guiding you. Oh, I'm creating a diagram, and that involves putting the nodes in, layouting it, and in the end, moving to the selected node, which is active here, this one, and highlight it. Of course, that is navigable. So if I go here and say, oh, where is that in my diagram, it will, once again, with the transition, go there and select it. And the other way around, if I double-click here, it will select the state in the diagram. And even do that when I close the editor. So it will reopen the editor. Why does that work? Because I don't, and this is something you should keep in mind, if you build things against Xtext APIs, never return to the elements themselves, the model elements, but keep their URI, the handle, in their hand, such that you can reopen them even if they're no longer existing because the editor has been closed. Okay, so what does that have to do with usability? The first thing is the smoothness. The second thing is, note how I highlight, how I make the selection. It looks like the node is like lifted up from the desktop, which means this is a physical metaphor, you know? It gets a shadow, it gets a bit bigger, and it gets a shadow. And this is like, okay, I have to pick up things before I move them around. This may not be the cutest idea, but it's important that we think in these kinds of metaphors when you want to build a product that is self-explaining. Okay? Handles with control points might not be that self-explaining to non-engineering people. But that is very, very suggestive. Okay, and then, of course, I can move nodes without them becoming some kind of gray rectangle. Connections are updated live. That's clear. And I have these guiding lines to align things. So there's also, the goal is also to have everything in the diagram. No need to add further views or dialogues. They're all distracting. They go away if you click on the wrong thing, and they will deteriorate your usability. All right, so what's more, we have these connections here. They are Bezier curves. Bezier curves have a problem. They are controlled by control points, which are not actually interpolated. So explain to someone what the control point is that somehow modifies the curve but doesn't interpolate it. So, but everyone understands magnetism, so I had these magnets as an icon. Okay, once again, another metaphor. Everyone understands magnetism, and I can move these magnets around, and the curve will perform. Well, will be changed accordingly. And I also aligned the labels with the curve. That makes pretty much sense if you have lots of connections with lots of labels, because you usually run into a layouting problem then. Okay, connections going through your labels. You don't want that. That can all be easily done with JavaFX. Most of these things are one-liners. There's no need to add big abstractions for everything. Okay, adding a mouse listener, that's just 2 lines of code and extend. Adding of course, the support for the endpoints was a bit more difficult, but usually things are very, very, very simple and can be done with just a few lines of code. And every kind of framework, big thing that I have between me and my code is kind of a possible obstacle to implement something. Okay, then everything's smooth. So I have a Mac. I'm a Mac user. It has a big touchpad. I like iPad and all that stuff. So I want to have gestures, and I have them. So I can scroll with 2 fingers, all smooth. I can zoom with 2 fingers, and note that it keeps the pivot, so it zooms in or out at the specific location where I am. You may not find that in all F3-based editors. Oops. And I can go back to a one-to-one representation, which may be too small for this resolution. Okay, so smoothness. It's all about smoothness, and that is nice. Okay, so this is a very simple example. This is kind of the defaults you get. Well, of course, I have a bit of framework to bind that kind of thing to Xtext. And this is the default, but I want more. I want to be able to control what's in a node, at least. Okay, I want my nodes to be kind of mini applications that are configurable. And I'll show you that with a second example. Do you have questions so far? Yeah?
What happens if the model breaks?
If the model breaks. So currently this is a one-time operation. So when I say, okay, now do the diagram, it paints the diagram, and there's no way back. There's no additional reporting going on. You will have to implement that, but that's possible. So you still have, inside every node, you have that pointer to the original element, and you could validate that. But I don't want to do that every time I do any change here, because as you know, I add a parenthesis or whatever, and that will break the entire model. Okay, so be careful when you implement such things as refresh to do it at the right moments. For example, when the model is saved, maybe a good point in time. Yeah. This one does not create any model. In fact, yeah. Yes, as far as that is possible, of course. I mean, if a broken Xtext model is usually quite poor, yeah, because major parts of the model really get lost. So this is not referring to the persisted state, but to the editor state. Okay, let me show you the second example. This is about domain model. Okay, do you know our domain model language? That is another example language we ship with Xtext. I delete this. And yeah, it's about data modeling. So it's about entities which have properties. And this is an example here. We have several packages which are containers, and we have nested elements inside them which are the entities with properties. That binds actually against Java. So you could use Java types here, like list and string. This is really Java types. You see that in the hover. Okay. What we have here is we have some container nodes. Packages. So let me add a package to the class diagram. This is just a simple node. When I hover over it, I get a tooltip. It says, oh, double-click me to open. And I double-click, and then an animation starts to open the element and show its contents, and the contents are then auto-layouted. What's in base? Once again, animation, auto-layout. Oh, that looks bad. What happened here? Huh? Something's kind of broken. Okay. Well, it still works. This is how the world is. And of course, we can go out again, and once it has been layouted, it stays that way. Okay, and you noted the transitions, and it's not about slickness, it's about, hey, I'm going into that node. Okay, I understand that when I see that. It's not like flickering the content, it's I go inside. I get a hint, a visual hint, what's happening. This is so important. It's all about animation. All right. But this is still a diagram that shows everything, at least everything that's in the package. Let's look at another type of diagram. I want to see what's the surroundings of a person. I do that in the same diagram. There's no necessity to leave that. I could just edit here. So from a given person, I can discover its vicinity, all the references, or all its supertypes. So this one has a lot of references. Let's have a look what's there. There's address, date, phone, and so on. So I can visually switch between them, select one, and it's going to be added. Well, that one was the bad one, okay? That was Java util date. But the point is, you get nice transitions, edit, you have choose visually in the diagram what should be in the diagram. And you can start with whatever element you want and add new ones and that stuff. So this is what people want. If a diagram should add value on top of your Xtext language, you have to make it easy to describe what's in the diagram. And that's an easy way, and it's mostly graphical. All right, this one looks bad. But I talked a bit about mini applications. So this one is actually some kind of mini application. So it also sets right-click to configure, and I right-click. And I get a configuration view of that node. Okay? It changes to something different. And here, in fact, you see JavaFX widgets. They're called controls in JavaFX. But this is actually checkboxes in JavaFX and a color chooser. So you could do everything there. You could even play a movie or whatever thing. So everything that's possible in JavaFX, you could embed it right in the editor. So the application of that is really almost unlimited. So yeah, I don't want to see the methods. There are too many of them. And I don't care about the attributes. And I want to change the color. So do it. Oh, that was double click, sorry, right click. And you say it changed the node. Okay? So easy ways to add things to diagrams, and you can make your nodes as rich as you want them to be. And that's cool. This is what I want. This is where I want to put my effort to improve usability. Okay, ever thought about undo redo? If that's correct, if that does the right thing for you, what is undo redo for? Undo redo is, for me, I have made something a while ago, and I want to go back to that point in time and turn back all changes until that, and then do something different. What do I need in order to find that point in time? Well, I need some kind of visual anchor. I need to know when was that? Well, something to remember. And you've seen a lot of these. Oh, here's actually date is open because I can also add Java classes. Right. Maybe I should go back here. So, you've seen so many animations now, so why not guide the user with undo redo as well? So have an animation backward to that point in time where you did something. And I want to show you exactly this one. So here we go. That was not Control P is print in the editor, but Control P is print in my diagram view. So you have a small media player here, and this is my undo player. Okay, I can go back now. What did I change? I moved this, I added these nodes, and I can go back, and you see all the transitions, everything, and the viewport is even restored. That is more important for me if I have a big diagram. Maybe I did a change over there, but when I did that change, I had a look over there. You know, it doesn't make sense if I press undo and I don't see what's happening on the screen because it's actually a model change somewhere else. Okay, and of course, when I can do this step by step, I can also animate the entire thing. So undo redo is really helpful in terms of with this animation stuff. I can really go back, find the point in time where I did the change. Okay, that all works because I don't even keep a diagram model. That may be heretic, but it's actually quite cool because JavaFX has properties and data binding, and you can bind any kind of property like the position of a node to anything else. Okay, and if you add an interaction with a diagram model, that may make sense for saving or the undo redo, but we saw a better thing of undo redo. That model is just a duplication of the data that you have in your graph, in your scene graph anyway. So what did I do? Persistence here, I can save. I can save to a JSON-based format. I can show you that. Well, by the way, here's the graphical menu. This is my save button, the rocket, because I sent it in the cloud. That was the metaphor. Not the best one. I can save it to a JSON file. And what happens is that I told you I want to build my own nodes with all kinds of behaviors. Of course, these nodes have to define what has to be persisted. Okay? If I cannot predict that, if I don't have that kind of diagram model that restricts what can be saved, I have to make that possible. So what I have here, I use an Xtext extend construct. It's an active annotation that allows me to annotate which kind of properties go into the model when it is saved. And I want to open it again. So that's the cloud thing here. I just didn't have better icons. That's a usability quirk, really. It will really open the diagram as it was. So that works. I don't need that diagram model that has to be reconciled with the semantic model and the figure model, and I don't want that complexity. It's all easy. It's really easy with JavaFX. Yes, please. This is the same question as before. So what happens if the diagram content doesn't match the semantic model? Well, you have to implement that. I mean, you're in charge of implementing your nodes. You have to implement how to cope with that. And I cannot give you a generic strategy for this. That's the point. I mean, the frameworks, they try to, but it's actually wrong. You could say, oh, yeah, then it's deleted, then work is lost, maybe. You can say, well, it has to be connected to something else, but you have to find a strategy to bind it to something else. Okay. So this is not something the framework can decide for you. This is something you have to implement yourself. In Graffiti, you can do that, by the way. Well, they have the update thing, and it can be all configured. But at the cost of many models that have to be synchronized. Okay, good. I guess this is more or less it. Did I have more? I just wonder. I had save, I had undo, redo, all that stuff. Of course, auto layouting is in there with using Kila framework. So I come to a conclusion. If there are no more questions. Well, we have it afterwards. Okay, so FX diagram. This is open source. You find it at GitHub. Well, it's my project currently, so I spend a lot of time on it. I would be pretty curious if you try it out and tell me what you think about it. Even if you want to use it in a larger scale, we are really happy to give you more support on that, or even have a project to make it better. I even have an oomph configuration. Who knows oomph? So that should, that's good. That should make it pretty easy to consume. Keep in mind you need currently, because of a bug in JavaFX 8, you need an early access release of Java. That's the only restriction. But it's all documented up there. So these are the points I want to make today. This is what you should take home. User experience is why people like or are going to buy your product. And you want to have control of that, over that. And you won't, well, it is pretty hard if you use a framework to keep that control. So you want to get rid of all these quirks. Okay, they may look cute, but they may also look you and your framework silly, as they may have made me look silly on the stage. Okay? So that's it. Thanks for your attention. If you want to have more time, well, you certainly already saw our robot wrestling fight at our booth. So that's also a great game, also involving JavaFX, Xtext, Extend, all technologies that we about. So thanks for your attention. I guess I have time for one question, two questions. Any questions? If there aren't any, not too bad. I'm at the booth, so you will find me picking up robots there. Okay, thanks a lot. It was a pleasure to be here. Enjoy the conference.